There's no drug to put in there and make it better. They all disrupt that function. So why do we think that they're helping? If you drink a couple of beers at night and it relaxes you, maybe helps you sleep for a few hours, what's going on? Your brain is being sedated. It's being shut down. It's being slowed down. That's not an improvement in function.
Viewer discretion is advised. The following is a Bible-based documentary on child psychiatry. If you are a minor experiencing any of the symptoms being discussed today, please consult with a parent or guardian before putting into practice the advice given in this documentary. The truth will set you free. In Jesus' name, may this documentary open your eyes on the evils of psychiatry.
There are many parents that turn to psychotropic medication. They go to a doctor and search for answers because their child is acting in ways which they seem and they perceive as inappropriate. So you go to a doctor, the doctor signs a prescription for you. You take it to the pharmacy, you get that prescription, you take it home, and most of the time you don't know what you're giving your child. Some may be antipsychotic medications, others may be antidepressant medications, anti-anxiety medications, mood stabilizers, or anti-ADHD, which is a made-up disease. And you give your child the Adderall, you give your child the Ritalin, you give your child the Seroquel, the Abilify, the Suprexa, the Zoloft, the Paxil. I have taken Paxil, the Vistaril, the Lithium, in hopes that everything improves. But as time progresses, your child simply becomes another statistic, another victim of the pharmaceutical industry.
Stop! No! Stop! No!
These are not temper tantrums.
I'm just not alone in here!
You're listening to the demons inside 15-year-old Brenna Wollenberg's head.
Not alone! You don't understand!
The voices she can't hide from.
I'm never alone!
Telling her to hurt herself and others.
No!
What is it gonna solve?
Everything!
This is a child in the throes of mental illness.
Stop.
Yes! No!
Psychotic episodes where evil spirits tell Brenna to kill.
When you have your own child saying to you, I am not a monster. I am not a monster. But I want to love you, but I can't because the voices won't let me.
They want her to kill the dogs. They want her to kill us. They especially want her to kill Jen.
These videos were taken before her parents had to make an agonizing decision to send her to a permanent residential treatment center.
I don't care!
Every maternal instinct tells you that this is wrong, that you're dropping your child off and you're gonna leave.
I want them to stay in here forever.
And Brenna is not the only one who suffers from mental illness. So does the Wollenbergs' middle child, Ailish.
I'm worrying about dying, even though I'm, 13?
She says the smiles in the pictures she takes are all an act. You think you can be happy?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been very difficult, and I guess happiness is out there somewhere, but it's really inside yourself, my mom says. So I don't really know how to find it.
See, sadness overpowers Ailish. The first time she tried to kill herself, she was just 6. She even tried to kill her younger sister.
I just remember that I got really, really angry, and then my hands were around her neck.
I had these bruises everywhere and all over my neck and stuff. And, it was really scary too. But I can talk about it just fine now, so.
I had lost control.
What a sad look in that child's face. But I come to bring hope today, aside from a little bit of education on this topic. For you see in 2 Timothy 1:7 it says, For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power. Demons tremble at the power of Jesus Christ, and of love, and of a sound mind. As I mentioned earlier, many parents take their child as concerned adults, as concerned parents, which any parent would be concerned for their child, and take them to the doctor, expecting to have someone find the answers for their child. But what we see is children being medicated for diseases that are made up.
Now, you may think this is an isolated case, but it's not, because just a few miles from where the Wollenbergs live, another family is struggling as well.
Jenny, don't do that, sweetie.
See, while most families would spend time together after dinner,
You ready to go?
this is where the Schofields separate for the night.
Joe.
Sleeping in different apartments in the same complex to protect their 3-year-old son, Bodie, from their 8-year-old daughter, Janny.
She was constantly threatening to hurt him, and she would be hitting me.
What did you want to do to Bodie when he first came?
Hit him. I'm schizophrenic.
You're what?
Schizophrenic.
What does that mean?
I see things that right there.
And some of those hallucinations are commanding, violent.
Kick Bodie.
Even as a newborn, her parents noticed something was different.
What is it that you see? Something Mommy and Daddy can't see, huh?
By 5, the visions grew, some showing up as people, some as animals. She calls most of them numbers.
But what does AD tell you to do, sweetie?
Jump off buildings.
Jump off buildings?
The voices would also tell her to hurt herself, even her parents.
Do you like your voices?
Yeah.
Psychiatrist Mark D'Antonio runs the Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Ward at UCLA.
This is a very rare case. You're not going to go to an elementary school and see 5 kids like this.
It's very interesting that the word pharmacy is derived from the Greek word pharmakia, which in the Strong's is 5331. And you find that word pharmakia in Revelations 9:21 and Revelations 18:23. So interesting that the pharmaceutical industry decided to pick such a word, pharmakia. When you search that word, you will see that in the Greek usage, it says the use or the administrating of drugs, poisoning, sorcery, magical arts, often found in connections with idolatry and fostered by it, the deceptions and seductions of idolatry. We see this word pharmakia used in several instances in the scriptures, in the Bible. In Galatians 5:20, it says, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. Here we see that the word pharmakia is synonymous with witchcraft. In Revelation 9:21, we see, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. Here we see the word pharmakia associated with sorceries. Revelation 18:23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth. And how were these great men of the earth deceiving people? For by thy sorceries, pharmakia, were all the nations deceived. And the victims, especially from the psychiatric industry, are plentiful. They're plentiful.
Who's afraid of you, Beth?
John.
Your brother. And what is your brother, why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what, at nighttime, what do your parents do to your door?
Lock it shut.
Why do they lock it shut?
Because they don't want me to hurt John.
Right. And they're kind of afraid of hurting John? Of you hurting John?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are they afraid that you might hurt them?
Yep.
Would you, Beth?
Mm-hmm.
When would you do it?
Nighttime.
Okay. Why would you do nighttime?
Because I don't like them seeing me do it. But they can tell me to it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you do to him, Beth?
Stab him.
Okay. What would you stab him with?
A knife.
Okay. And what are you trying to do to your brother?
Kill him.
Why do you want your brother to die?
Because I was hurt so bad, and I don't want to be around people.
Okay. Who else would you like to stick pins into?
Mommy and Daddy.
What would you like to have happen to them?
Die.
In Mark 5:25, we see a story, and it starts, "And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit." We will paraphrase some of the rest, but if you read that entire chapter, you will see that this person who was bound by an unclean spirit had supernatural strength. He was unreasonable. Even with chains, you could not hold him down. In verse 5, you will see that he was sadistic. He suffered from depression. He self-harmed himself. He would cut himself. He would cry. He would manipulate. In verses 6 through 9, you then see that the same demons that were inside that man, causing him to be unreasonable, causing him to be aggressive, those very same demons had to bow down to God. When they saw Christ, they saw God. And they declared in verse 9, "We are many, we are legion." And they begged God not to send them out of the area. That is very interesting that they begged God not to send them out of the area. It appears that some of these demonic entities are territorial, and they begged him not to send them out of the area. From verses 11 through 14 in that same chapter, you'll see that those demons possess a herd of animals, pigs, and then what happens next is death is involved. Whenever there's a demon involved, there's death. But as you can clearly see, the answer is found in God, because they bow down to God. The sad part is that in that chapter, you will see in verse 17 that they reacted the same way that some of you are reacting today. And they began to pray to him to depart out of their coasts. Here Christ had come in there and delivered this man from an unclean spirit. They should have been thanking God for doing so, but they asked God to leave their midst. I pray that in Jesus' name, as you continue to see the possession that these kids are going through in this video, that if you're going through the same thing in your family, that you don't shun God out of the equation. On the contrary, ask him to come in, to deliver your home, to deliver your family. In Jesus' name. Take a look at this.
Brandon's having a rough day today. Then I can't take you to the beach.
No!
You can't even see people. I know, but I don't.
No!
Come draw with me. I gave her some medicine to try to help her so that she's not feeling so angry. Not that I like to do it, but it has to be done so that she can calm herself. Right now, Brianna is diagnosed with several things: dissociative disorder, NOS, autism spectrum disorder, sensory integration disorder, psychosis disorder, NOS, mood disorder, NOS. And the NOS stands for not otherwise specified. All the doctors have told me and my husband to be prepared that usually they wait until the child's closer to 7 or 8 to diagnose early onset schizophrenia. Today, Brianna is 6.5 years old. Brianna has been slipping for the last 4 weeks, so we're exhibiting psychosis episodes 7 to 8 times a day on a minimum. Some days we lose her totally for the day. One of her personalities and voices is 7. Could you do us a favor?
What?
Could you draw us a picture of what 7 looks like?
Oh, yeah.
7 is a person who is actually shaped like a number. I think 7's got a lot to do with it today because 7 likes to tell everybody that there's nobody that lives in Brianna's head. I have been stabbed with forks, tomato steaks, Seven will sit there and punch you dead in the face and then swear up and down, screaming for hours, "I didn't touch you, you're a liar." Who's the one that throws chairs at mommy and stabs mommy and beats mommy up all the time?
Izzy.
Izzy.
But that was like earlier.
Yeah, that was a while ago, the last time Izzy was that mean. They don't really believe that Seven or Izzy or any of them are hallucinations. They believe these are people that Brianna actually becomes. Brianna's dug her own skin up because the spiders were crawling on it. She won't sleep for days because the rats are crawling on the floor. Nicole, I need you to bring me her shirt, please, baby.
Sometimes I'm really scared of her. Like, whenever she's upset, she just she comes at the nearest person that she can get to.
Why do you help her?
Because she's my sister and I love her. Like, that's what any other big sister would do, even if she has that illness.
2 Corinthians 11:3. But I fear, lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. God is continuously warning us in Scripture to guard our minds, to have a sound mind. It breaks my heart to see these children who do not have a sound mind, and to see parents that have bought into the brainwashing of the pharmaceutical industry. In the clip I just showed you, this mother, in my opinion, was acting very irresponsibly because she continued to egg on her daughter to draw her pictures of these multiple personalities. Another fact that I wanted to point out, if you noticed earlier when I played the previous clip, the girl had a personality that was manifesting through her called 100, I believe, and another one with another number.
At 2, she started to talk about what we thought were imaginary friends.
Why?
The first one to appear was 400 the cat, and she would just play with 400. We didn't think too much of it. Oh, I know what she needs. You need a Thorazine, Jenny. The medication, the Thorazine, for every delusion that the Thorazine kills, another one comes to take its place. And Jenny's unwilling to let go of the good ones because they're her friends. She had always been very, very social because, of course, we were out all the time. But then, right around her 3rd birthday, she started to become antisocial. She would scream at people if they called her January. She would tell her friends that she didn't want to play with them anymore. At one point, she had probably as many as 20 or 30 friends, and they just, slowly all dropped away. And the number of imaginary friends kept growing and growing and growing. And then at 5, the violence began. She began hitting, kicking, biting, throwing shoes. When I would say that she would hit, these weren't like tantrums. The impact of her blows was like she was fighting for her life. And there was no warning. One moment she's like, I love you, Daddy. And then all of a sudden, she is literally trying to scratch my eyes out. She would be like that for 10 or 15 minutes, and then she'd come dead after it. Slowly became obvious, but not till she went into UCLA, that she was disassociating from those violent moments.
This is Miss 60.
And really didn't remember them. She knew that she'd done something wrong, but she didn't know what.
She was 5 years old and he was born, and she was running around the hospital going nuts before any medication. I grabbed her. I just grabbed her and put her on my lap. And she turned to somebody who was not there and said, "Ooh, she's not pregnant anymore," in that kind of a voice. And it kind of freaked me out. I'd never heard her talk like that. I'd never heard her talk specifically to somebody else. We knew she had all the imaginary friends, but it didn't quite, it started to sort of add up, basically. But we did take her to a psychologist because it got to the point where we couldn't live with her.
These are 2 different documentaries, folks, that I'm showing you clips of, and both of these kids are manifesting that there are demons. In my humble opinion, there are demons, and I think that it is factual according to the scriptures. These are demons that are manifesting themselves as numbers. In this case, the girl actually drew what was manifesting inside of her mind, but the parents are responsible for this to some degree because they're egging the child on. They're not guarding their child by simply talking to the camera on the side, mentioning what the child has. No, they're saying this kid has 7 personalities inside of them. I believe it's because of the brainwashing of the medical industry. Not only that, but nowadays you're rewarded to medicate your child. In many cases, you can put your child on Social Security. And that's all part of the deception. But how is it that parents fall for this deception in the first place? It's because whenever you start giving these child medications, you give your child some Adderall, you give your child some Ritalin, you give your child some Strattera, some Seroquel, some Zoloft, some Prozac. Initially, you're going to see some improvement, and that is because the main area that these antipsychotic medications affect is your frontal lobe. You use your frontal lobe nearly every single day. You use it to make decisions. You use it to know what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to have for breakfast. It all comes from the top of your dome, from the frontal lobes. When you're going to study, when you're going to sleep, when you're going to think. The frontal lobe also controls your personality. Every single one of us has a specific personality that God has created you with. Some of you are more hyper than others. Others are more calmer than others. The frontal lobe helps you plan. It helps you process such things as planning. Let's say, for example, you're planning a vacation later on this year. Your frontal lobe helps you process that. The frontal lobe is also there to help you speak fluently, without fault, meaningfully. It helps you solve problems. It helps you solve emotions. Your emotions lie within the frontal lobe for the most part. So this is why these medications seem to work at the beginning and they hook the parent, because they're basically dumbing down your child. They're taking the mind of your child captive. And if you're an adult taking these medications, they're taking your mind captive. And just in case you think that I'm making this up, that's fine. I'm going to play you a clip of a doctor, Peter Breggin himself. Listen to what he has to say about it.
Every single psychoactive substance disrupts that function. There's no drug to put in there and make it better. They all disrupt that function. So why do we think that they're helping? If you drink a couple of beers at night and it relaxes you, maybe helps you sleep for a few hours, what's going on? Your brain is being sedated. It's being shut down. It's being slowed down. That's not an improvement in function. It's actually a harmful dysfunction. For example, if you all of a sudden had to do something important, if I'm a psychiatrist, as I am, and I'm going to answer the phone and I have a distressed patient, do I want to have 2 beers under the belt? Of course not. I need my frontal lobes functioning. And I hope my patients' frontal lobes are functioning, which is, by the way, why I don't start people on psychiatric drugs. Any psychoactive substance, alcohol, marijuana, any psychiatric substance, marijuana, alcohol, Prozac, Abilify, lithium, Ritalin, Adderall, it doesn't matter what the substance is, it's impairing that function. Well, why does it seem like it's helping? We already saw that it might seem like it's helping if you want less function at night and you just want to have yourself pressured to go to sleep. It's an abnormal state, pushed into sleep by a sedative. But basically, all psychiatric drugs take the edge off your frontal lobe function, off of your caring, your thinking, your feeling. And that's the primary effect that most of them have, that people seek. We have less pain. It's an anesthesia of the brain. and hence the spirit or soul. All psychoactive substances tend to do that. They do that in somewhat different ways, but that's what they do. They suppress or disable brain function. In my books and articles, I call that the brain disabling principles of psychiatric treatment. The brain disabling principle of psychiatric treatment. Well, I've talked about sedation. If you take a benzodiazepine like a Xanax or Klonopin or Ciarax or Ativan, it's having an alcohol-like effect. It in fact is jacking up a system called GABA, which is an overall suppressant system in the brain. And if you took enough of a benzo, you could actually undergo anesthesia without anything else. Most anesthetics are related to the benzos. All right, that will reduce your anxiety for a time, but it's not actually specifically affecting your anxiety. It's suppressing your higher brain functions, of which anxiety is one. It's also going to be suppressing some of your cognitive function, some of your memory function, your overall brain function. Let's say you're taking, and I hope you're not, Abilify or Seroquel or Risperdal or Zyprexa, one of the so-called antipsychotic drugs. Well, there's nothing antipsychotic about them. We don't know how to pluck psychosis out of the brain. These drugs block a specific neuronal pathway. They block dopamine, which is the main pathway to guess where? Your frontal lobes. So you're getting a chemical lobotomy when you take these drugs.
Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. As you can see, these antipsychotic medications that your child is taking affect your child, and you see initial improvement because it impacts their frontal lobes. It dumbs down your child. But how did your child get corrupted in the first place? How did your child get so anxious in the first place? How did your child start to suffer from depression at the age of 8, 9, 10? Some 15, 16, 17. How did you as an adult become so depressed and so quote-unquote bipolar? It is because most of what you hear in your ear is processed through the frontal lobes before anything else. This is why music has such a powerful effect on our brains. When you listen to music, it goes through your frontal lobes. And it gives you good emotions. It gives you bad emotions. When you're watching a horror film, not that I'm endorsing that, by the way, but just giving you an example. As soon as the killer is coming out from somewhere, you hear music that is suspenseful. It prepares your body for that attack. If you're watching a sad movie, maybe you're watching Titanic, and they put that little romantic song, right? Or you're watching a documentary like this one. Music enters your body through the frontal lobe, right? Through your ears, goes through your frontal lobe. It carries out emotions of pleasure, of sadness, touching you deeply, and so forth. The same way anything that you watch on TV, for example. Your child is there being raised by the television set, and then you wonder why your child is thinking the way he's thinking. Look at these child actors from Disney. From Britney Spears to Miley Cyrus, all of them simply turn out so wonderfully great when they grow up older, don't they? No, they don't. They create these actors so that your kids grow up with them. And as they grow up, they always seem to rebel. They always seem to fall into drugs. They always seem to fall out of the tracks. As a parent, you need to conform your mind to the knowledge of Jesus Christ. You need to have a sound mind. And you need to guard your children. Because the devil himself corrupts your children with a lot of the entertainment that we see. And then when your child is hyper in school, why is he hyper? Because, well, he hasn't played much. When you and I grew up, we were outside playing all day long. Kids now play with their iPads more than they play outside. Is that not true? That's why kids have so much energy at school. And then when your teacher says, hey, your child is too anxious. He has ADHD. You have to medicate him. Why? Because most schools now, not all of them, but most schools are even asking for psychiatric evaluation of kids before you even enroll them. And what happens then? You have a doctor, and the doctor looks at you and he starts talking, and he tells you that your child is ill. Maybe your child is shy. Maybe your child is not comfortable talking to a stranger. But in a 5-minute session,
I want you to understand something. I want you to listen to me, okay? The reason why you act the way that you do, fidgeting, daydreaming, running and climbing excessively, speaking out of turn, inability to pay attention. You with me? That's a symptom right there. That's on the list. You have ADHD. You have a brain dysfunction. You are chemically imbalanced. You are mentally ill.
You come out of there with a prescription. And if you don't give that child a prescription, then the school counselor is going to say that you're being a bad parent. And you're going down a rabbit hole that's never going to end. Because the government wants to raise your children in this country.
The first question at President Kennedy's news conference deals with the Supreme Court decision that a New York school prayer violates constitutional separation of church and state. The president's statement is in the nature of an effort to calm the storm over the decision.
Well, I haven't seen the measures in the Congress, and you'd have to make a determination of what the language was and what the effect it would have on the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has made its judgment. A good many people obviously will disagree with it. Others will agree with it. But I think that it is important for us, if we're going to maintain our constitutional principle, that we support Supreme Court decisions even when we may not agree with them. In addition, we have in this case a very easy remedy, and that is to pray ourselves. And I would think that it would be a welcome reminder to every American family that we can pray a good deal more at home, we can attend our churches with a good deal more fidelity, and we can make the true meaning of prayer much more important in the lives of all of our children. That power is very much open to us. And I would hope that as a result of this decision that all American parents will intensify their efforts at home.
June 25th, 1962. It's a day that marks a big difference in terms of how children were being taught in public schools. That was John F. Kennedy trying to console the masses that, hey, it's going to be okay. Reminds me of when Obama said the same thing when same-sex marriage was approved across the land. Hey, it's going to be okay. Yet when you look at the statistics around America, in public schools, you know and you see that it is not okay. America is not number one in terms of education, and American schools are actually on the decline in a very fast rate.
It's okay.
Cheryl Tackett says she's trying to comfort her 6-year-old daughter, Lanira, but she can hardly get the words out herself.
I just started crying. I couldn't do anything but cry.
She says she couldn't keep it together when the school told her what happened.
She was choking her and banging her head viciously on the toilet and covering her mouth.
She says it was a premeditated attack, and the 5th grader knew exactly what she was doing.
The girl just said she wanted to talk to my daughter. She pulled her into the bathroom and then proceeded with the attack.
When Lanira's 1st grade teacher was finally able to get into the bathroom, she was lying bloodied on the floor.
Her clothes were soaking wet, her backpack was soaking wet.
And she says it didn't start today. Tackett says she told the school last week that the 5th grader had threatened Lanira on the bus and told her she was going to beat her up. but she never thought it would get this bad.
She goes and describing it. She can't really finish it. She cries. She's traumatized. She doesn't want to go to bathrooms by herself anymore.
She says she just wants her daughter to feel safe.
My baby, like, who would attack a innocent, like, 6-year-old?
You see, you've taken away God from schools. And in taking away God from schools, you take away conviction from schools. And when you take away conviction from a child, they're going to be rebellious. They're not going to respect moral authority. Not only that, but when you look at what is happening in public schools.
Jordan Woolley originally answered the question, there is a God, in 2 ways.
I said that it was a fact or opinion.
2 ways because?
Based on my religion and based on what I think and believe, I did not think that it was a commonplace assertion.
Woolley says her 7th grade reading teacher said both her answers were wrong and that Woolley had to admit God wasn't real.
I didn't really know what to do. So the first thing I did was tell my mom.
Jordan's mom, Chantel, couldn't believe it.
That a kid was literally graded against her faith in God in a classroom. So who would want that to be known?
Today I was given an assignment in school that questioned my faith.
Jordan made sure all of Katy and beyond knew about what happened by testifying last night in front of Katy ISD's Board of Education meeting.
So the kids were like caught in a catch-22. If they argued for their faith, and they were being told that they were arguing against their faith, and that happened in the classroom.
Today, Katy ISD released a statement saying in part that the assignment was intended to encourage critical thinking and dialogue and not question any student's religious beliefs.
You wonder why your kids feel so depressed, so anxious, so frustrated in the schools. Well, if what you've taught them in school is that they weren't created by God, but rather that in schools they're taught that they evolved from an ape. In schools they are taught that they came out of the primordial soup. So you take conviction away from children. You take the fact that they were created in the image of God away from children. All because one man, a Jewish man called Stephen Engel, in 1958 decided to sue the New York State over the fact that his children were praying to Jesus. Because Jewish people do not believe that Jesus Christ is God manifested in the flesh. And the end result is, because one parent was upset, it took it away for the whole people in America. And we're seeing the same thing now, an instability in schools, children that cannot even decide something as simple as going to the restroom. Now with Obama, now in schools, he has written a letter to all schools that either they comply with his new transgender agenda or they will lose funding. Combine that with the fact that parents are not doing what they have to do in their homes. Parents are not raising their children. Most parents are trying to keep up with the Joneses, and as a result, they work 2 or 3 jobs. Mommy's never there. Daddy's never there. And when they're there, they're not paying attention to their kids. And what do you have? Utter chaos in children. And it is manifesting in a huge way in public schools. And this is why your children are going through what they're going through. You better wake up.
A lonely girl stands alone, not a friend and a cold, cold soul. But my friend says, like, everybody has a teeny piece of bipolar. I'm like, not really. That's just normal. That's just, everybody has feelings. The worst part of having bipolar disorder is when I feel like I want to scream and burning and angry. I might say things I don't mean. The opposite feeling is when I feel really happy and excited and all tingly and smiley. Well, when I have the mood things, it feels like clouds, sort of. The rain cloud is a sad cloud. Thunder and lightning is the angry cloud, and the rainbow is the excited one. It's not a cloud, but it's related to weather. Here's your plate, Melanie. Okay. Do you want any sugar with your tea? Yes, please. I love sugar. Yeah, I can tell because I get so hyper. I remember feeling like I was a bad kid because, I just did feel like that. I was scared that I was gonna die. I was just always afraid of dying. Then later I was really happy and thought I was gonna go on a tire swing to Princess Land. I sometimes feel like when I take the medicine, like I'm more boring and don't like believe in magic and stuff, and sometimes I feel sad about that. Well, I still believe in magic, but sometimes it just feels like that.
1 John 4:1. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Before you medicate your child, you have to ask a lot of questions. One of the ways many psychiatrists, get you to actually medicate your child is by telling you that he or she has a chemical imbalance. Now I want you to ask yourself, how can that doctor who has not ran a single blood test on your child tell you that your child has a chemical imbalance in their brain? Very important questions here. How can a psychiatrist who's only seen you for 20 minutes already have his pen and pad ready to write you a prescription for a chemical imbalance, for bipolar, for ADHD, for manic depression, for schizophrenia, without running any actual physical test that you can prove? Let's take a look at this mother. Her child died because of these drugs. As an end result, she is now asking different doctors and videotaping and asking them what happened to her child. And you're going to see different doctors tell you the lies behind the chemical imbalance delusion. Check this out.
So I made the 3-hour drive to see him.
Tell me what brought you to drive all the way down here.
Well, we went to a doctor, a psychologist.
Okay.
And my son was diagnosed with depression, and we were told that it was caused by a chemical imbalance. Is there such a thing as a chemical imbalance in the brain that can cause psychological problems?
No, actually, that's one of the misstatements of disinformation or misinformation that's coming out. And unfortunately, I think your psychologist believes there's a chemical imbalance, and a lot of people do. The psychologists, educators, the psychiatrists certainly accept it, and now pediatricians are accepting it. It is not caused by chemical imbalance. And what makes me angry is so many of the doctors are just buying into that. It's just not true.
There's no test or anything that could have been done to determine that. Am I right?
They claim that they found this chemical imbalance or that anatomical problem or anomaly with the brain or nervous system, and yet if you were to send your child to a lab to have the chemical tests done on his blood or urine, they would look at you like you're insane because it can't be done. So what they claim is an imbalance cannot be measured by any laboratory or urine tests or PET scans or CAT scans. None of it can be replicated at the clinical level. And there are about 1,000 claims that come out every year where they think they found the cause of depression or ADD or bipolar disorder. None of it is true. Does that answer your question, Celeste?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. I feel that if I had known better, if I'd had the information in front of me to make a decision, he would never have been on that drug, to be honest. He never would have been on that drug. And I believe we would have worked it through. So I feel to blame.
You feel guilty?
I do. I think I'll always feel that way.
You did not let your son down. You were an honest parent, honestly seeking help for your son who was having some trouble. And if you went to the bookstore, the books would say the same thing. The same garbage would be inundated through all the bookshelves. So you'd pull one book after another book after another book, and all you would get is chemical imbalance or a neurological disorder and all this. And they need the drugs, and the drugs and therapy, the combination is the way to go. You would have gotten it from everywhere you would have looked, except the very few scholars around the nation and the world that are fighting this. And we're a rare breed. We read deep into literature. You're not at fault, Celeste. I think your attitude will change. But right now, the prevailing and pervasive attitude is what you walked into. It makes me angry. I feel anger at hearing your story.
Dr. Stein, thank you so much.
God bless you, and I'll help you any way I can.
1 Peter 1:13. Wherefore gird up the loins of your mind. Be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is so to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Gird up the loins of your mind. Parents, before you medicate your child, understand that ADHD is huge business. According to these statistics that I'm showing you on the screen, over 6.4 million American children ages between 4 and 17 have been diagnosed with ADHD, and the number keeps climbing, folks. The average age of diagnosis is 7. Age when symptoms of ADHD typically appear in a child from 3 to 6. I find that absurd because the symptoms of ADHD typically are that your child makes mistakes in their schoolwork, they're distracted, they have trouble organizing different tasks, they are rebellious, they don't listen, they're hyper, they run and climb everywhere, they're extremely impatient, they're always on the go. Daddy, are we there yet? Daddy, can we do this? Daddy, can we do that? Folks, that's not ADHD. That is typical childhood. The average patient that is undergoing ADHD treatment, it's approximately 14,576 per year. ADHD costs American citizens approximately $42.5 billion per year. The worst part about these medications, whether it's ADHD or whether they tell you that your child is bipolar, is that you're creating lifelong patients for the psychiatric industry. And furthermore, worse than that, these medications affect the frontal lobes of your children. These doctors tell you that your child has a chemical imbalance without testing your child, but don't you understand that the pills that they give your child alters the brain? And in the frontal lobe, that is where their emotions lie. That is where their empathy lies. That is where their charity lies. Their personality lies within there. In 2 Timothy 3:2-8, you can read that whole chapter and book if you want to. It's great. But it warns us that men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection. Aren't we seeing that a lot in schools nowadays? Without natural affection. Truth breakers, false accusers, and much, much more. These medications are creating not only lifelong patients to the mental industry, but they're creating narcissists. They're creating children that are not going to have a good personality because of the fact that these medicines alter their brains. They're not going to be as loving. They're not going to have a good personality. They're not going to be funny. They're not going to have compassion upon others, empathy upon others. Because you're damaging your chemistry of your child's brain. But there is hope in Jesus Christ, because I believe that Jesus Christ is the answer, that He can renew your child's brain in Jesus' name. But your child is not going to get better until you realize how serious this is upon your child.
In just these past few months, I have found that we are in the middle of an epidemic of the psychiatric drugging of our children. Across the world, there are 20 million children on some type of psychiatric drug. 20 million. And as shocking as it might seem, psychiatrists at a recent conference even admitted that they are diagnosing children at younger and younger ages.
From your personal experience, what's the earliest age that you could diagnose a child with a mental disorder?
It depends. Some disorders start in early childhood, some in adolescence, some in adulthood.
It's a very, very complicated question.
Earliest isn't really a criterion.
In the junior school, going towards high school.
13, 14. Probably 6 and over.
6 and 7.
The age is 6.
5 or 6.
Age 5.
5 years?
3, 4, 5, 6 years of age.
Probably 4 or 5.
4 or 5. 4 or 5.
When you look at a kid who's 4 years old and trying to diagnose him with ADD, how can you tell it's not just because they're 4 years old?
4 years, 3 years.
Very early. 2, 3, 4.
2 or 3 years?
The age of 2 or 3.
2, 3.
Toddler.
Before 18 months.
They can actually see signs as early as the age of 1.
It's a few months probably. Babies.
The newborn.
Newborns.
In the uterus. Pre-birth, that's what we wish. Psychological problems start even when you are in the mother's womb.
It's disgusting that anyone would even think of giving a mind-altering drug to a young child with a developing brain. But what about the children drugged before they are even born?
Folks, it begins with you, parent. It begins with you, mom. It begins with you, dad. Mothers especially, because whenever you're pregnant, you're going to fall in depression. Whenever you're pregnant, you're going to be tempted to take the medications that your doctor's going to give you for that depression. But take a look at this. But children of women who took antidepressants during the 2nd and 3rd trimester of pregnancy were 87% more likely to develop autism than kids born to women who didn't take the drugs, researchers report in JAMA Pediatrics. It's very dangerous for you to take antidepressants while your child is in your belly. Another article. A recent report suggests that newborns exposed to selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors SSRIs, antidepressants such as Prozac, Zoloft, Celexa, and Paxil may be at risk for developing withdrawal symptoms after delivery. Then your child is born and they have withdrawal symptoms, and then they're anxious, and then they already have a mentality. I mean, you have to understand that while your child is in their belly, they're developing their brain, they're developing their body, and they're developing a brain in the midst of all of these chemicals. And that can't be good, parent. That can't be good, dad. That can't be good, mom. It starts with us. You have to understand that the psychiatric industry, via their pharmakia and their sorcery, what they've done is they've legalized sin. You know, there was a point in time in our country that if you stole something, you were a thief and you paid the consequence. Nowadays, if you steal something, you're called a kleptomaniac. There was a time and day in this world that if you were disrespectful to a woman and disrespected her, and you disrespected a woman and you hit her or you yelled at her or you used profanity towards her, there was a point in time that you were called an abusive person. Now a person can hide behind bipolar. Many women do it, many men do it. They will disrespect you, they will manipulate you, and then they will blame their quote-unquote disease. Because we have done a very good job in this world at masking sins and calling them diseases. Well, they're not diseases, they're sins. They are sins, and you have to understand that. I am in no way saying that you should not visit a doctor, because you have to understand that there are different diseases in this world. If you break your foot, you need a cast, right? But before they put a cast, they do an x-ray to determine if you really need a cast. If you're diabetic, if your pancreas is not producing any more insulin, they have to do tests to determine it before they give you insulin. If you have a heart valve problem, they cannot just give you a medicine for it. They have to do tests. They have to do a stress test. Yet in the psychiatric industry, it is the only type of industry where they're legally poisoning your child. They can do a 10-question pamphlet, and based on your replies, you're depressed. And most of those questions are trick questions. Because let's be honest, we have all gone through days that we've cried. We have all gone through days that we're depressed. We don't wake up every day all jolly. That just isn't reality. Reality is not like that, and you have to take responsibility both as an adult that is undergoing any type of psychiatric medications. You have to understand that these psychiatric medications, they end up creating narcissists. And you'll notice it when you talk to a person who says that they're schizophrenic, that they're bipolar. They never blame themselves for disrespecting people. They always blame the disease. No, my friend. Until you simply admit to God, God, I repent because I am angry all the time. That is not of God. Until you can admit that, then it's much easier for you to say that you're bipolar. Until you can admit that if a person is hearing voices, that those are symptoms of a person either making it up or of a person who is demonically possessed, then you're not going to solve the problem. At the end of the day, parent, it's up to you. You set the tone in your home. If a doctor wants to medicate your child, have your child tested. Have them tested for vitamin deficiencies, for anemia. Have them tested for diabetes. Do not take the first response that a doctor gives you. If you have a car and you take it to one dealership and that dealership wants to charge you a lot of money, you wouldn't do it with your car, so why do you do it with your child? Take your child to different doctors. Find the doctor that will suit your needs. If a doctor tells you your child has a chemical imbalance, simply say, okay doctor, I appreciate you. Can you prove it? It is that simple. And friends, you're going to have to teach your children 2 Corinthians 10:4-5. I've given you practical advice in this video, but at the end of the day, there's only one that can help you, and his name is Jesus Christ. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Listen to this: casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing it into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Most of what gets us depressed is imaginations. I will never find a boyfriend. I will never find good friends. Nobody loves me. Who told you those things? Who put those things in your mind? It wasn't Jesus. Satan is the accuser, and he throws imaginations in your mind, and your children. And parent, you have to teach your children discernment, so that when they get a thought that is ungodly, they can take that thought to God and say, God, is this of you? And God will say nope, and they can boom, throw that out of their mind. There's only one that can help your home. There's only one that can set you free, and his name is Jesus Christ. It's time, parents, for us to not trust in our own understanding, but lean upon Christ. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. He shall direct your home. There is hope. Oh, there is hope. And that hope is Jesus. May God bless you. Thank you for watching this. Feel free to download it on our website or share it with a friend or family. As I mentioned, it starts and it ends with you, parent. It may mean that you have to sacrifice and not have to work so much to spend time with your kids. It may mean that you don't have to live the lifestyle that you live now so that you can spend time with your kids, right? But at the end of the day, they're worth it. They're worth it. May God bless you. I love you, and thank you for watching. God bless.